I used to believe that growing up together meant growing up the same. Same house. Same parents. Same meals at the same table. But life doesn't work that way. And I learned that truth much later, when the silence in our family finally started to speak. From the outside, we looked like a perfect family. No loud fights. No broken doors. No dramatic scenes. People used to say, "You're lucky. Your family is so calm." What they didn't see was how calm can sometimes hide everything. We were close in age, close in rooms, close in routines. But somehow, we were never close in choices. I was the one who stayed quiet, followed rules, did what was expected. My sibling was different, louder, braver, always pushing against limits. As kids, I thought that made them stronger. As adults, I realized it made them freer. Back then, I didn't question anything. Why should I? Parents were parents. Home was home. And family was family. Or so I thought. Every morning followed the same pattern. Same hallway. Same breakfast table. Same unspoken expectations. But even then, there was something I couldn't name. A feeling that one of us was being prepared for the world, while the other was being prepared to stay behind. No one ever said it out loud. But silence has its own language. When school ended, my sibling talked about leaving. New city. New life. New chances. I remember laughing it off, saying, "Why would you ever leave this place?" They just smiled. A tired smile. The kind that knows something you don't. I stayed. Not because I wanted to, but because staying felt like the right thing to do. Family needs someone steady. Someone responsible. Someone who doesn't ask too many questions. Years passed like that. Slowly. Quietly. Until one day, the distance between us wasn't measured in miles, but in understanding. When my sibling finally left, the house didn't feel emptier. It felt heavier. Responsibilities shifted without discussion. Expectations landed on my shoulders without warning. And still, no one talked about it. I told myself this was normal. This is what family does. This is what love looks like. But deep down, something didn't sit right. Why did leaving feel like freedom for one of us? And a duty for the other? I didn't know it then, but that question was the beginning. The beginning of a truth that had been hidden carefully. Not out of cruelty, but out of convenience. And when that truth finally came out, it didn't arrive with shouting or anger. It arrived quietly. Like a door left open just enough for me to see inside. That was the moment I realized. We didn't choose different paths by accident. Someone chose for us. And once I saw that, there was no unseeing it. After my sibling left, everyone assumed I would be fine. No one asked me if I was ready. No one asked me if I wanted this life. They just smiled and said things like, "You're strong. You can handle it. We're lucky we have you." At first, those words felt like praise. Later, they felt like chains. Suddenly, I was the one staying late. The one picking up responsibilities that didn't belong to me. The one adjusting my plans, my dreams, my timeline. And every time I felt tired, I reminded myself. This is family. This is what love costs. Meanwhile, my sibling's life moved forward. New job. New friends. New stories. Every phone call sounded lighter than the last. I told myself I wasn't jealous. I told myself I was proud. But pride doesn't feel heavy in your chest. And support doesn't feel like quiet resentment. The strange part was how normal everyone acted. As if this shift had always been planned. As if roles had been decided long before we were old enough to notice. I started seeing patterns I had ignored before. How decisions were made without me. How expectations were placed on me, gently, politely, but firmly. How my siblings' choices were discussed, while mine were assumed. One evening, after another long day, I finally spoke up. Not angrily. Not dramatically. Just honestly. I said I was tired. That I felt stuck. That I wanted to know when things would change. The room went quiet. Not uncomfortable quiet. Familiar quiet. My parents smiled and said, "This is just how things are for now." For now. That phrase haunted me. Because, for now, had no ending. No plan. No promise. It was then I realized something important. My sibling didn't escape responsibility. They were released from it. And I had been chosen to carry it. But why? That question followed me everywhere. In the kitchen. In the hallway. In the same room where we grew up believing everything was equal. I started remembering moments from childhood. Small things. Things that didn't matter back then. How my sibling was encouraged to take risks. How I was praised for being careful. How their mistakes were brushed aside. While mine were lessons. At the time, it felt like parenting. Now, it felt like preparation. One night, while organizing old papers, I found a folder. Nothing dramatic. Just documents. Notes. Old reminders. But something about it felt deliberate. Dates matched moments in our lives. Decisions aligned too perfectly. I wasn't meant to find it. I knew that instantly. And yet, there it was. Proof that my life hadn't unfolded by chance. I didn't confront anyone right away. Truth has weight. And I wasn't sure I was ready to carry more. Instead, I listened. I observed. I noticed how quickly conversations changed when I entered the room. That's when it hit me. The truth wasn't hidden because it was dangerous. It was hidden because it was convenient. Because it kept the peace. Because it kept things running smoothly. Because someone had to stay. And that someone was me. By the end of that week, I understood one thing clearly. This wasn't about love or sacrifice. It was about control dressed up as responsibility. And once you see that difference, you can't go back to pretending. I didn't know what I would do yet. I didn't have a plan. I didn't want revenge. But I wanted answers. And I was done carrying a weight I never agreed to pick up. I didn't plan to uncover the truth. I wasn't searching for secrets or trying to prove anyone wrong. I just wanted to understand my place in a family that suddenly felt unfamiliar. The folder stayed on my mind. Not because of what it showed, but because of what it suggested. Someone had been planning our lives long before we were old enough to question it. I waited for the right moment. Not out of fear, but because timing matters when truth is fragile. That moment came on an ordinary afternoon. No arguments. No raised voices. Just the kind of quiet that feels safe enough for honesty. I asked a simple question. When did you decide I would stay? The room froze. Not in shock, but in recognition. That pause told me everything. My parents sighed, slowly, like someone who had been carrying the same weight for years. Then came the sentence that changed how I see my childhood forever. We thought it was best this way. Best. For whom? They explained it calmly. Almost gently. One child was restless. Always dreaming bigger, pushing further. They were afraid that if that child felt trapped, They would break. The other child, me, was steady. Reliable. Strong in quiet ways. They believed I could handle more. So they planned accordingly. They didn't call it control. They called it balance. Someone had to stay close. Someone had to be available. Someone had to keep things together. They never asked me. Because asking would have complicated things. As they spoke, memories rearranged themselves in my mind. The encouragements. The expectations. The invisible lines I was never meant to cross. None of it was accidental. It wasn't hatred. It wasn't cruelty. It was fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of change. Fear that freedom for one child would mean loss for the family. And fear always chooses the path of least resistance. I wanted to be angry. But anger needs a villain. And this story didn't have one. Just people making choices that felt easier at the time. Still, something inside me cracked. Because intention doesn't erase impact. They thought they were protecting the family. But in doing so, they had quietly taken something from me. Choice. They told me they assumed I understood. That I would accept it. That I would stay. Because I always had. That was the moment I realized the truth no one meant to tell me. My loyalty had been mistaken for consent. And once that truth was out, there was no putting it back. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't demand apologies. I simply listened. Because sometimes, silence is the clearest response. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was angry. But because my future suddenly felt open. For the first time, I wasn't thinking about what the family needed. I was thinking about what I needed. And that thought scared me more than any truth ever could. Because once you see the truth, you have to decide what to do with it. And I was finally ready to decide. After the truth came out, nothing looked different. The house was the same. The routine stayed intact. Meals were still shared at the same table. But something invisible had shifted. Conversations felt careful. Smiles felt measured. Everyone was waiting, though no one said for what. I didn't confront anyone again. Not because I was afraid. But because I needed space to hear my own thoughts. For the first time in my life, I stopped filling the gaps. I didn't volunteer. I didn't rush to fix things. I didn't step in before being asked. At first, no one noticed. They were used to me being there. Steady, available, unquestioning. But silence has a way of revealing structure. Small things started to fall out of place. Not dramatically. Just enough to be noticed. Appointments got missed. Decisions were delayed. Tasks assumed to be handled suddenly weren't. No one blamed me. Not yet. Instead, confusion crept in. I could feel the shift in the air. Like balance being tested. Inside me, the struggle was louder. Every instinct told me to step back in. To smooth things over. To carry the weight again. That instinct had been trained into me over years. But now, I questioned it. Was this love? Or was this habit? I started taking small steps outward. Updating my resume. Reconnecting with old goals. Allowing myself to imagine a life not centered on duty. Each step felt wrong. Not because it was wrong. But because it was new. One evening, a quiet comment landed harder than any argument. Things feel different lately. I nodded. They were right. Different didn't mean broken. It meant exposed. I didn't announce my plans. I didn't threaten change. I simply changed my availability. And that was the quiet revenge they never expected. Not revenge fueled by anger, but justice built on choice. For the first time, the family had to adjust around me. And they didn't like how hard that felt. Questions came slowly. Are you okay? Is something wrong? I answered honestly. I'm figuring things out. No accusations. No blame. Just truth. The hardest part wasn't leaving responsibilities behind. It was letting go of the version of myself that existed only to hold things together. I realized something powerful. They didn't need me to stay. They needed me to not leave. And those are very different things. As weeks passed, the silence became heavier for them. And lighter for me. Because silence, when chosen, is freedom. And freedom has a way of changing the balance. Without raising its voice. Months passed since I had first discovered the truth. And yet, the family continued as if nothing had changed. But inside, everything had already shifted. One evening, my sibling returned for a visit. Not a long one, just a weekend. But the moment they walked through the door, the air felt different. We sat together, just the two of us. No parents, no interruptions. For the first time in years, it was just us, the people who grew up under the same roof but walked completely different paths. I could see it in their eyes. They had lived freely, achieved their dreams, but something was missing. And I had spent all those years carrying responsibility, feeling trapped, yet grounded. We didn't speak immediately. The quiet between us wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy with unspoken truths, the things we had both felt but never said. Finally, I spoke. Not accusing. Not blaming. Just stating what I had learned. I stayed. You left. But we were both following the paths set for us, by others. They stared, stunned. Not angry. Not defensive. Just, surprised. And then, quietly, they admitted it. I always felt guilty for leaving you behind. I didn't know how much you were carrying until now. It hit me. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't confrontation. It was realization. For the first time, we truly understood each other. The choices we had made, the burdens we had carried, the freedoms we had enjoyed, it was all clearer now. That weekend, small things started to change. Conversations became honest. Tasks were shared, not assumed. Laughter returned, not as a routine, but as a release. I realized the quiet revenge I had executed, not through anger, but through choice and presence, had shifted the balance. Without shouting. Without drama. Without resentment. And the family finally saw me. Not just as the one who held everything together, but as the person who deserved to choose their own path. By the time my sibling left, the house felt different. Not emptier. Not chaotic. But aligned. Balanced. Free in its own way. I had learned something important. You don't need to fight to be heard. Sometimes, choosing yourself is the loudest message you can give. And for the first time, I felt peace. Not the quiet peace of keeping things together, but the deep peace of truth being acknowledged. This moment was the climax of years of hidden truths, unspoken expectations, and silent decisions. And it changed everything, quietly, completely, and forever. The lesson hidden in silence. By the time life returned to its usual rhythm, I had changed. Not in dramatic ways. Not overnight. But in the quiet, steady way that only truth can shape a person. I understood something fundamental. Family is not just the people you live with. It's the choices you make together, and the choices you allow each other to make alone. For years, I had equated responsibility with love. I had believed that carrying burdens quietly was proof of care. And while that's true in part, it's not the whole story. Love also means letting go. Love also means honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. Love means allowing freedom, even if it disrupts the balance you once relied on. I realized my siblings' life wasn't more important than mine. And my path wasn't less valid than theirs. We had simply been guided along roads that were already chosen, roads that weren't ours to choose at the time. The truth I discovered wasn't about betrayal. It wasn't about revenge. It was about clarity. I learned to see the invisible lines in our family, the unspoken rules, the expectations, the silent sacrifices. And I chose to acknowledge them, not resent them. I began to live my life intentionally. Not as the responsible one. Not as the child who stayed. But as me, fully, unapologetically, and freely. Our family changed too. Not dramatically. Not overnight. But with time, small conversations grew honest. Tasks were shared, decisions discussed, and respect for each person's choice became natural. I realized one more thing. Revenge is often portrayed as dramatic or loud. But real justice, in life and in family, can be quiet. It can come through self-respect, boundaries, and the courage to step into your own path. Looking back, I don't feel anger. I feel understanding. I feel growth. And, most importantly, I feel freedom. So here's the lesson I want to leave with you. Family may guide you, expect things from you, or even unintentionally limit you. But your life is yours to choose. Your voice deserves to be heard. Your truth deserves to exist. And sometimes, the most powerful change doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from living your life in a way that no one can ignore, not through shouting, not through force, but through quiet, undeniable authenticity. Because at the end of the day, that's the path to peace. For you. For your family. And for everyone who will one day follow their own road.